Imagine this, okay? You are hovering in warm, uh, tea-colored, really murky water.
Oh, and it is incredibly quiet.
Right. Totally silent. And all around you, there are these tangled, stilt-like roots plunging into the salty water.
Yeah, they look just like the long wooden fingers of a sleeping giant.
Exactly. And you are perfectly, completely still. I mean, you have a flat back, which allows you to float mere millimeters below the surface of the water without making a single ripple.
Not a single splash.
Nope. To the world above you, you are entirely invisible. But you are watching.
Always watching.
Your massive forward-facing eyes lock onto a juicy, bright green beetle resting on a thick leaf just a few feet above the water.
And you are hungry.
You're very hungry.
Yeah.
But you don't jump. You don't thrash around. Instead, you just wait for the perfect angle. You press your hard tongue against a special built-in groove in the roof of your mouth,
Getting everything lined up.
right? You take aim. Then you snap your gills shut with incredible explosive force.
Oh.
A high-speed, invisible bullet of water rockets from the surface.
Just slices right through the humid air.
It strikes the green beetle with the force of a tiny hammer. The bug loses its grip, tumbles downward through the air, and splashes into the water.
And before it can even right itself.
Bam!
Yeah.
You dart forward and snap it up. Dinner is served.
It all happens in like less time than it takes to blink. A perfect, silent, and totally unexpected strike from below.
Welcome back to Saltwater Stories, everyone. You just experienced the world through the eyes of the archerfish. It is, without a doubt, nature's ultimate aquatic sharpshooter.
Oh, absolutely.
Today, we are going completely under the canopy to uncover how this small silver and black striped fish manages to merge the magic of the ocean with, well, the exact science of physics.
It's essentially a fish that literally uses water as a homemade tool.
Yeah, an actual weapon to hunt in a completely different environment outside of the water.
It really is a remarkable story of adaptation. You know, we spend so much time talking about animals that are perfectly suited to their one specific habitat. But the archerfish?
Ah.
It completely ignores the boundary between the underwater world and the world of the sky.
Just doesn't care about the rule.
Not at all. And by the time we finish our journey today, we are going to understand how the shape of an animal's body can act as a machine, how physics controls the movement of water in midair, and how every single piece of a coastal ecosystem is beautifully tied together.
I have been looking forward to talking about this one all week. But before we get to the heavy science and the physics, let's take a quick trip back in time to set the stage for you.
Oh, I love this story.
It's so good. Okay, picture this in your mind. It is the 1800s. A European explorer is wandering through a humid, incredibly hot, mosquito-filled tropical swamp in Southeast Asia.
Just totally miserable.
Exactly, sweating through his boots. He's been walking all day, and he sits down near the edge of a muddy, quiet pond to take a break. He pulls out a cigarette, lights it up, and leans back against the trunk of a massive tree.
And it's pretty dark in the swamp, right?
Yeah, dim, shadowy light. So the tip of the cigarette is glowing bright orange. Suddenly, out of absolutely nowhere, zap. A precise, high-speed stream of water shoots right out of the swamp and perfectly hits the end of the cigarette, completely putting out the glowing ember right in his mouth.
I always smile when I think about that story. It sounds like something straight out of a cartoon.
It really does, like a prank.
Right. Now, historical accounts from the 19th century have a habit of being a little bit exaggerated for dramatic effect. But the fascinating thing is that this specific legend is rooted in a very real, documented phenomenon.
So it wasn't just a fish that hated smoking.
Huh. No. The archerfish didn't shoot the explorer out of malice. The fish is just so keenly tuned to hunting that it mistook the glowing orange ember of the cigarette for a firefly.
Ooh, that makes so much sense. A firefly or maybe some other glowing bug hovering over the dark water. The fish saw a glowing orange dot, assumed it was a midnight snack, and took the shot.
Exactly right. It saw the glowing target, calculated the distance in a fraction of a second, and fired with absolutely perfect accuracy. It extinguished the ember because it literally thought it was knocking a bug out of the sky.
That is just wild. Imagine sitting by a swamp, minding your own business, and getting squirted right in the face by a fish that thinks your face is a glowing bug.
Quite the shock.
Definitely. But this brings up the most obvious question, and it's the thing I've been wondering about the most. How is this even physically possible?
It's a great question.
Because, like, When I try to squirt water out of my mouth, like when you're a kid at a summer picnic shooting watermelon seeds or trying to squirt pool water at your friends, it just sort of splatters everywhere.
It's messy.
Super messy. It drops after a few feet. It is definitely not a sniper rifle.
Yeah.
How does a fish build a functional high-powered water gun inside its face?
Well, to understand that, we have to look really closely at the physical shape of the archerfish's mouth. Biologists sometimes refer to this as the blowpipe hypothesis.
The blowpipe hypothesis. I like the sound of that.
Yeah. Almost everything about their head is specially engineered for this one highly specific task. First, they have what we call a protractile mouth.
Protractile. Break that down for us. What does that actually look like?
It means their lower jaw is actually longer than their upper jaw, and it juts forward.
Oh, like an underbite.
Precisely. If you picture someone with a severe underbite pushing their lower teeth out past their top teeth, that's what we are talking about. Because of this built-in underbite, their mouth naturally points upward toward the surface of the water and therefore straight toward the sky.
Okay, so it has an upward pointing nozzle ready to go at all times.
Yeah.
But just pointing upward isn't enough to make a focused stream of water.
No, it's not. The inside of the mouth is where the real mechanical magic happens. If you run your tongue along the roof of your own mouth right now, what does it feel like?
It feels mostly smooth.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe a little bumpy right behind the front teeth, but mostly just a smooth arch.
Right. But the roof of the archerfish's mouth is completely different. It has a very deep, very narrow groove running right down the middle, like a tiny trench.
A trench in the roof of the mouth. Okay, I'm picturing it.
Now add the tongue. The fish's tongue is not soft and squishy like a human tongue.
Wait, it's not?
Nope. It is hard. It's made of tough cartilage, and it has a sharp, raised ridge running along the very top edge of it.
Oh, wait, I see how this fits together. Literally, the raised ridge on the hard tongue perfectly fits into the deep groove on the roof of the mouth.
You've got it. When the archerfish spots an insect up in the branches, it presses its hard tongue up against the roof of its mouth. That ridge seals tightly into the groove, and instantly the fish has created a hollow tube inside its mouth.
It's just like a built-in drinking straw. Or, considering what it's used for, a rainforest blowgun. The tube becomes the barrel of the gun.
That is a wonderful way to visualize it. The tongue creates the barrel, and the very tip of the tongue stays just flexible enough to act like a valve, controlling the flow of the water and helping to aim it.
It's so smart.
But as you know, a barrel is completely useless without pressure behind it. A blowgun needs someone to blow into it.
Right. And fish don't have lungs. I mean, they breathe water through their gills, so they can't just take a deep breath of air and blow it out. How do they generate the pressure to shoot the water so far?
Well, instead of lungs, it uses its gill covers. The bony plates on the sides of a fish's head that protect the gills are called opercula. The archerfish rapidly and violently slams these bony gill covers shut.
Oh, so it squeezes its head.
Essentially, yes. This action acts exactly like a mechanical pump. When the covers slam shut, it forces a massive, sudden surge of water from the back of the throat, pushing it entirely through that specialized straw in its mouth and shooting it out into the air.
That is brilliant engineering. It uses its whole head as a mechanical pump and valve system. The gills are the pump, the tongue and the roof of the mouth are the barrel, and the tip of the tongue is the nozzle.
It's a perfectly evolved system.
But having the hardware is really only half the battle, isn't it? Because if you're going to be a sniper in the wild, you need to be completely invisible to your target, and you need to be able to actually see what you're shooting at. Let's talk about stealth first. How does a fish hide from a bug that is looking down from a tree?
The archerfish is an absolute master of camouflage and stealth. It all starts with its body shape. Biologists describe the archerfish as being laterally compressed.
So flattened from side to side, like
Uh-huh.
a pancake standing on its edge.
Yes, exactly. If you look at an archerfish from the front, it is incredibly thin, flattened almost like a silver coin. This shape allows it to slip completely silently through the narrow, tangled, vertical roots of the swamp without bumping into things or making a commotion.
And what about its back? Because in our opening story, we talked about how you had a perfectly flat back, allowing you to float right under the surface. Why is that so important?
The dorsal profile, which is the line running from the tip of its snout all the way back to its top fin, is almost perfectly straight. This is a crucial element for stealth.
How come?
Well, think about a normal fish, like a goldfish or a trout, with a curved, round back. If a round-backed fish swims right below the surface of the water, its body displaces the water upward, creating ripples and disturbing the surface tension.
Right, like when a submarine gets too close to the surface, the water bulges up above it. And to a cricket or a beetle sitting on a leaf just a few inches above the water, a sudden ripple is a massive warning sign that something is moving right underneath them.
Exactly. But because the archerfish has a perfectly flat back, it doesn't push the water upward in the same way. It can hover just a millimeter below the surface without breaking the surface tension at all.
So the water stays totally flat.
It leaves the water perfectly glassy and undisturbed. The bug has absolutely no idea a predator is right underneath it.
It's like a stealth bomber.
Yeah.
And on top of the physical shape, they have that incredible coloring. They're usually this beautiful silvery white or pale golden color, but they have these bold, striking black or dark brown vertical stripes running down their sides. Why vertical stripes? Why not spots?
It comes back to where they live. Imagine the sunlight shining down through the green leaves of the canopy. The light hits the dark, vertical roots of the mangrove trees plunging into the water, creating a pattern of vertical light and dark shadows.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, those vertical stripes on the fish make it blend perfectly into that background of light, shadow, and roots. We call this disruptive coloration. It breaks up the visual outline of the fish.
So instead of seeing the shape of a whole fish, a bird looking down just sees a pattern of shadows, and a bug looking down just sees the reflection of roots. It is practically invisible.
It's nature's perfect camouflage.
Okay, I follow the stealth, but here is where I get a little stuck. The fish has the built-in blowgun. It has the perfect stealth body and the disruptive camouflage. But it lives in a muddy swamp.
Very muddy.
Right. The water is murky, it's tea-colored, it's full of floating leaves and silt. How on earth does it aim at a tiny little green beetle that might be 3, 4, or even 5 feet away up in the air?
It all comes down to their eyes. Their vision is, frankly, nothing short of a superpower in the animal kingdom.
Really? Better than other fish.
Oh, much better. Think about most fish you see in an aquarium. They have eyes placed firmly on the sides of their heads. That placement is fantastic for looking out for predators coming from any direction, giving them a very wide field of view.
Right, so they don't get eaten
Exactly. But side-facing eyes are terrible for judging distance.
because they can't focus both eyes on the same spot.
Yeah,
But the archerfish is different.
very different. The archerfish has extremely large forward-facing eyes. Because both of its eyes can focus on the exact same target at the exact same time, it gives them what we call binocular vision.
Binocular vision. That means they have real depth perception, just like humans do. For our younger listeners trying to picture this, try this little experiment later. Cover one eye with your hand and ask a friend to hold up a pencil. Then take another pencil and try to touch the tips together.
It's surprisingly tricky.
It is. It is surprisingly hard to do because with only one eye, you lose your sense of distance. But with two eyes, your brain calculates the distance perfectly.
That's a great experiment to try. And the archerfish's eyes aren't just positioned well, they are incredibly high definition. Inside the eye, on the back wall called the retina, they have a concentrated area that packs an astonishing number of photoreceptor cells.
How many are we talking?
We are talking up to 50,000 of these cells per square millimeter.
50,000 cells per square millimeter. That is like having a top-of-the-line, ultra-high-definition 4K digital camera built right into your face. They must be able to see every tiny hair on a fly's leg.
They absolutely can. That density gives them the ability to clearly see targets just a few millimeters wide from over a meter away. But it gets even more advanced.
More advanced than a 4K camera.
Yep. Inside their eyes, they have a highly specialized smooth muscle known as the retractor lentis. What this muscle does is physically pull the lens of the eye back and forth to rapidly change focus.
Wait, it physically moves the lens?
Oh,
So it literally acts like the zooming mechanism on a fancy camera lens.
that's exactly what it does.
They lock onto the target, their eyes zoom in to get the perfect focus, they form the straw with their tongue, and they prepare to fire.
You've got the sequence perfectly.
Okay, so this is where things get truly wild. They fire the water, but when that stream of water leaves their mouth, they don't just shoot it in a straight, steady line. I remember reading that they actually sculpt the water in midair. It's like they were real-life waterbenders.
That is a wonderful way to describe it. They aren't just shooting water, they are actively manipulating its physical properties while it is in flight. The archerfish uses a highly complex principle of fluid dynamics called kinematic gathering.
Kinematic gathering. That sounds like something rocket scientists study. How does a fish do that?
It all has to do with how they change the shape of their mouth while the water is leaving it. They do not just open their mouth and release a steady, consistent stream of water.
So it's not just a steady hose.
No. As the water is sheeting out, the fish continuously and rapidly changes the size of the opening at the tip of its mouth. The water that comes out at the very beginning of the squirt is pushed out at a moderate speed. But the water that is forced out at the very end of the squirt is pushed much, much faster.
Okay, let's try to picture this. Think of it like a really long freight train rolling down the train tracks. Suddenly, the back half of the train detaches from the front, fires up a massive rocket engine, and speeds up tremendously.
That's a great image.
It races forward along the tracks, catches up to the front half, and violently smashes into the front cars right before the entire train hits a brick wall. All of that energy from the front and the back hits the wall at the exact same millisecond.
That is a brilliant analogy. That is exactly what happens with the stream of water. Because the water at the back of the stream is moving at a much higher velocity, it catches up to the slower water at the front while the whole stream is soaring through the air.
So it all squishes together.
Right. Right before it reaches the insect sitting on the leaf, all the water crashes together into one massive, heavy, highly concentrated drop. Scientists studying this phenomenon sometimes affectionately call it an uber blob.
An uber blob. I love that so much. A giant flying water hammer. But it makes me wonder, why go through all that trouble? Why do the mouth gymnastics to create kinematic gathering? Why not just hit the bug with a regular, steady stream from a powerful pump?
It is entirely about amplifying power and force. Insects have incredible gripping strength. Think about a beetle holding onto a waxy leaf during a tropical windstorm.
Yeah, they have those tiny claws that hook into the plant.
Exactly. It takes a massive amount of sudden force to knock them loose. If the fish hit the bug with a steady stream of water, it would just feel like a heavy rain. The bug would just hunker down and hold on.
Oh, that makes sense.
But by bunching all the water up into a heavy uber blob right before impact, the archerfish delivers an explosive punch. To be mathematically precise, it delivers a specific power of approximately 3,000 watts per kilogram.
3,000 watts per kilogram. I know that sounds like a massive number, but what does that actually mean in terms of animal strength?
Well, to put it in perspective, 3,000 watts per kilogram is more than 5 times the maximum power that any vertebrate muscle could produce on its own.
Wait, really? Any muscle?
Any muscle. A crocodile shutting its jaws, a cheetah sprinting, a human lifting weights. None of our muscles can produce that kind of concentrated, sudden power output.
That is staggering.
It is. The archerfish's jaw and gill muscles are simply not strong enough to hit a bug with that much force directly. It's biologically impossible. So, the fish uses the physical properties of water in motion to amplify its own strength.
It basically builds a high-impact kinetic tool out of water, totally outside of its own body, to do the heavy lifting for it.
That's precisely what it's doing.
So it's a tool user. But instead of using a stick or a rock like a chimpanzee, it uses physics and water to build a tool in midair. I am just blown away by that. But hold on, the plot thickens.
Oh, it gets more complicated.
Yeah, because the fish has to shoot this incredible physics-defying water bullet from under the water out into the air. Let's talk about the visual problem there. If you've ever been sitting by a pool on a sunny day and you put your legs in the water, or you put a straight stick into a glass of water, what happens when you look at it from the side?
The stick or your legs look like they are broken or bent right at the exact line where the air meets the water.
Exactly. It looks like a magic trick. And that visual illusion has to be the archerfish's biggest obstacle.
It absolutely is. That illusion is a fundamental rule of optical physics called refraction, and it is governed by something called Snell's law.
Snell's law. Okay, how does that work?
It works like this. When light travels through the empty air, it moves at a certain speed, but water is much denser and heavier than air. So when the light traveling from the bug hits the surface of the water, it slows down significantly and changes direction. The light beam literally bends.
Okay, so if I were swimming underwater in a pool and someone hung a piñata from a tree branch above the pool and I tried to throw a dart at it from underwater, I would probably miss by a mile, right? Because the piñata isn't actually where my eyes are telling me it is.
Precisely. Because of the bending light of refraction, the target appears to be shifted slightly upward and to the side. What you're looking at is a visual ghost. It's a mirage.
A ghost bug.
Right. If the archerfish aimed its highly powerful water jet directly at the visual ghost of the bug, the water would sail right past it, hitting nothing but empty air and alerting the bug to fly away.
So how on earth does it hit the bug? Does it just guess?
No guessing involved. The archerfish's brain automatically calculates the complex geometry of the bending light.
Wait, what?
Yeah, without using a calculator, without drawing a graph, and without taking a high school physics class. The fish's brain calculates the exact angle of refraction, ignores the optical illusion it is seeing with its own eyes, and aims at the true physical location of the insect.
It's doing biological calculus in real time. That is unbelievable. And what's even crazier is that they don't just calculate for the water, they adjust for the weather.
Yes, the wind adaptation.
I remember reading about this amazing motor adaptation experiment scientists ran. They wanted to see just how smart and adaptable these fish really were. They set up a tank in a lab, and they pointed a large fan to blow across the surface of the water, simulating a strong tropical wind.
That's a classic experiment.
Yeah.
The scientists set up the targets, turned on the fans, and waited. When the archerfish fired, the crosswind blew their water jets entirely off course, the water curved away, and the fish completely missed their targets.
I imagine they must have been pretty confused.
Yeah.
But they didn't just give up and go hungry. After only a handful of missed shots, the fish realized what was pushing their water around. They actively changed their aim.
They did.
They started shooting in a curve. They aimed slightly to the side, into the wind, and let the wind carry the water drop right into the target. They learned how to account for wind speed and wind direction on the fly.
It is a remarkable display of motor adaptation, which brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of these animals, their intelligence. For decades, there has been a very popular, very pervasive myth that fish are sort of, mindless.
Oh, like the old goldfish have a 3-second memory thing.
Exactly, that they are just simple, cold-blooded machines driven purely by basic instinct with no complex thoughts at all. The archerfish takes that myth, completely shatters it, and throws it right out the window.
Right, because if you were doing advanced fluid dynamics to create an uber blob, calculating the refraction of light through water, and adjusting for wind speed all in your head, you are definitely not lacking in the brains department.
Not at all.
But knowing all this math isn't enough, because the mangrove swamp is a wild, chaotic place. The archerfish doesn't just have to be smart about shooting its target, it has to be smart about dealing with its own neighbors. Let's talk about how they act around each other.
The social dynamics of the archerfish are intense. In the wild, you will very rarely find an archerfish hunting completely alone. They tend to patrol the muddy shorelines in small, highly competitive groups or schools.
Safety in numbers, right?
True, but it comes with the cost. And here is the harsh, difficult reality of life in the swamp. If you do all the hard work of spotting the bug, calculating the math, forming the hammerjet, and successfully knocking a juicy cricket out of a tree, you do not have any guaranteed right to eat it.
It's a free-for-all. I was reading about this concept, and scientists use this wonderfully long word to describe it, kleptoparasitism.
Yes, kleptoparasitism.
It's a huge word, but let's break it down because it's actually really fun. The first part, klepto, means to steal, like the word kleptomaniac. And a parasite is a creature that takes from others without giving anything back, like a flea or a tick. So if you put them together, kleptoparasitism basically means being a food-stealing pirate.
That is exactly what it is, piracy in the swamp. When the water hits the bug and the bug starts to fall, every single fish in that school hears the commotion and rushes toward the splash zone.
Oh boy.
Whoever gets their mouth around the bug first gets the meal, period. So the archerfish that actually took the shot has to be incredibly fast, or it just did all that amazing physics work to feed its lazy neighbor.
Oh, that would be so frustrating. Imagine doing all your homework and someone else gets the A. So how does the shooter make sure it wins the race to the bug? Because it's starting from the same spot as everyone else.
It wins by using a brilliant physical maneuver called the predictive C-start, and it is a marvel of high-speed decision-making in biology.
Okay, walk us through it.
Think about the timeline here. The water jet hits the insect. The bug loses its grip and begins to fall. Within just 40 milliseconds of the bug starting its descent.
Wait, let's pause right there. 40 milliseconds. I need some context for that. How fast is 40 milliseconds?
Well, it takes a human being about 300 to 400 milliseconds just to blink an eye. So we are talking about a fraction of a blink.
Okay, so before a human could even begin to blink, the fish's brain kicks into hyperdrive. What does it do in that microscopic window of time?
In those 40 milliseconds, the fish's brain evaluates the height of the branch the bug fell from. It evaluates the speed of the falling bug. It maps the trajectory or the curve of how the bug is falling through the air.
It's processing all that instantly.
Instantly. It takes all of that data and calculates exactly where the insect is going to crash land on the surface of the water. Once it has that exact set of coordinates, the fish violently bends its entire body sideways into a tight C shape, looking like a tightly coiled metal spring.
And then, boom, it releases the spring. It uses all that stored energy in its muscles to sprint at top speed toward the landing zone. But the incredible part is, it doesn't swim to where the bug is up in the air. It swims to where the bug will be in the future.
Exactly. It anticipates the drop.
It arrives at the exact splash zone before the bug even hits the water. It is waiting there with its mouth open.
It truly is a predictive maneuver, and it even updates its trajectory in real time as it swims, just in case the wind blows the falling bug a little to the left or right. It is performing biological calculus on the move.
That is just wild.
But what is truly remarkable, and what really cements their intelligence, is that they aren't born knowing exactly how to do all of this perfectly. It's not just a built-in computer program. It takes practice.
So the babies aren't snipers right away.
Not at all. Young archerfish, which are called fry, are notoriously terrible shots when they first start out. They miss constantly. They calculate wrong, they don't squirt hard enough, they miss the bug entirely.
It's like a kid trying to throw a basketball for the first time. It rarely goes in the hoop. So how do they learn? Do they just keep shooting blindly at leaves until they figure it out through trial and error?
They do practice through trial and error, but they also use a highly advanced technique called social learning. Scientists were so curious about this that they set up an experiment with young, naive fish. These were fry that had never, ever been taught to shoot at moving targets.
Okay.
The scientists put these young fish in a tank and let them watch an older, highly experienced master archerfish successfully shoot down targets that were moving across a screen above the tank.
So the young fish are just sitting there watching the masterclass. They aren't practicing themselves.
Just watching. No practice allowed. And when the young fish were finally given the chance to try it themselves for the very first time, they didn't flail around or miss.
Are you serious?
I am. They immediately adopted the master's technique and hit the moving targets accurately on their very first attempts. They mapped the complex spatial angles, the timing, and the fluid dynamics of the master fish into their own brains purely by observing.
That is staggering. A fish learning by quietly observing a mentor. I thought only dolphins or chimpanzees did that kind of thing.
It is incredibly rare in the animal kingdom. Social learning is usually heavily associated with primates, certain highly intelligent birds like crows and cetaceans. Finding it in a fish completely rewired how scientists think about aquatic intelligence.
But wait, the brain power gets even crazier than that.
Yeah.
You casually mentioned they were shooting at screens. I was reading some stuff about how scientists have actually used computer monitors to test the absolute limits of their vision and memory. Let's talk about the face study.
Ah, yes. This is one of the most famous and mind-bending studies ever done on the archerfish. Researchers wanted to know if they could recognize complex patterns, so they trained archerfish to spit a stream of water at pictures of human faces displayed on a computer monitor above their tank.
Okay, picture this from the fish's perspective. You are swimming in a quiet tank, minding your own business, and suddenly giant human faces appear on a glowing screen above you. And you quickly figure out that if you spit at a very specific face, a yummy treat drops into the water.
It sounds absurd, but it worked. And the astonishing part of the study is the level of detail they could process. The fish learned to accurately recognize and spit at specific human faces out of a lineup of 44 different people.
44.
Yes. Even when the researchers made it incredibly difficult by removing obvious clues like removing the shape of the head, hiding the hair color, and just showing the eyes, nose, and mouth, the fish could still tell the faces apart and hit the right target.
They can recognize us. A fish with a brain the size of a pea can pick your specific face out of a crowd of 44 different people. Honestly, I struggled to remember the names and faces of people I met at a party yesterday.
It's a very human problem.
It really makes you wonder what else is going on inside that little head. If they can tell human faces apart, they must be doing some incredible processing.
It profoundly challenges our fundamental assumptions about the architecture of intelligence. In biology, we tend to think you absolutely need a massive, highly complex mammalian brain, specifically, a structure called a cerebral cortex, to perform advanced tasks like facial recognition, predicting physics, for social learning.
Right, because mammals have this huge folded brain structure.
Exactly. Fish do not have a cerebral cortex at all. Their brains are structured completely differently.
So they're doing complex computer tasks using completely different hardware, like running a modern video game on an old calculator, but it somehow works perfectly.
That's a fun way to put it. The archerfish proves that evolution is incredibly resourceful. It can find entirely alternative, unique pathways and biological structures to achieve incredible cognitive feats. They don't need a human brain to do human-level visual processing.
And as if being a math genius with a photographic memory wasn't enough, they aren't just smart, cold calculators. They actually seem to have a sense of fairness. Let's talk about how they treat each other when food is on the line.
Yes, this is perhaps the most touching and surprising discovery about them. We just talked about how intensely competitive they are in the wild, using the sea start to race each other and steal food in a chaotic display of kleptoparasitism.
The pirates.
The pirates, exactly.
Yeah.
But under the right conditions, they also exhibit something called pro-social behavior.
Pro-social behavior. Basically, taking actions that actively help others in your group. The golden rule, sharing is caring.
Indeed. In a fascinating laboratory test, researchers set up a scenario to test their selfishness. They gave the archerfish a choice between two targets to shoot at. If they shot at target a machine dropped food only into their own private section of the tank. The fish got all the food for itself.
Makes sense.
But if they chose to shoot at target B, the machine dropped food into their section and simultaneously dropped food into a neighboring fish's section, separated by a clear wall.
And given that they are literally food-stealing pirates in the wild swamp, constantly fighting over crickets, you would logically think they would be totally selfish, right? Why share if you don't have to?
You would absolutely think they would choose the selfish option every time. But consistently, time and time again, when given the clear choice, the archerfish chose the target that shared the food equally with the tank mate next door.
No way.
Yes, they actively, repeatedly chose cooperation, fairness, and feeding their neighbor.
I just love that so much. What an incredibly beautiful, powerful lesson that is for all of you listening, especially for our younger listeners trying to navigate the world. Even out in the wild, in a tough, murky swamp where every single meal is a battle for survival, these highly competitive predators seem to understand that fairness, sharing, and cooperation actually have deep, meaningful value. You can be fierce and still be kind. It is just amazing.
It really is a heartwarming data point. It suggests that social cooperation is a deeply embedded survival strategy in nature, a fundamental part of life, not just a modern human invention.
Now, we keep mentioning this swamp, this very specific muddy habitat where they live. I want to make a special enthusiastic call out to you, our listeners. You might remember this from our entire past story dedicated specifically to this incredible, unique ecosystem. We're talking about the mangrove forests.
Oh, yes.
The mangroves. I know we spent an hour exploring those tangled roots in that past story, but let's refresh our memories on why this place is so vital for the archerfish.
The archerfish and the mangrove forests are intimately, inseparably connected. You simply don't have one without the other. Mangroves, for those who might be new to them, are remarkable trees that grow directly in tropical coastal waters. Their massive, thick, tangled roots arch above the mud and create a complex, protective, underwater labyrinth.
And the water there isn't like a normal freshwater lake, and it isn't like the open, salty ocean either. It's an estuary, right? The meeting place.
That is right. The water in a mangrove forest is brackish. That means it is a constantly shifting, swirling mixture of salty ocean water coming in from the tides and fresh river water flowing down from the land. As the tides roll in and out twice a day, the saltiness, the salinity changes drastically.
Which is usually bad news for fish.
Oh, very bad news. For a normal fish, a sudden change in salt can be deadly because it pulls the water right out of their cells.
But the archerfish is built differently.
Very differently. To survive in this shifting world, the archerfish has evolved to be uralian. This is a special adaptation where their kidneys and their gills are highly actively adapted to either filter out excess salt when the ocean tide comes in or retain their internal salt when the freshwater river floods the swamp.
So they have super kidneys.
They do. They can tolerate wild, extreme swings in saltiness, swimming happily between completely fresh rivers upstream and salty ocean shorelines downstream.
Okay, so they have the super kidneys to handle the salt. But I keep coming back to the big evolutionary question. Why did they evolve to shoot water into the air in the first place? Why not just swim around and hunt smaller fish and worms underwater like a normal, everyday fish?
It comes down to the difficult conditions of the mangrove swamp itself. The water in a mangrove forest is incredibly turbid. It is muddy, cloudy, churning with tides, full of decomposing brown leaves, and thick with shifting sand and silt.
So it's basically brown soup.
Exactly. Seeing anything more than a few inches away underwater is very difficult. If you are a predator relying on speed and clear sight to chase down smaller fish, you are going to have a very hard time making a living there.
So hunting underwater was tough. The visibility was terrible. But then, millions of years ago, one ancient, clever fish decided to look up.
Exactly. They looked up through the surface of the murky water and into the crystal clear air above them. And what did they see? They saw the sprawling green canopy of the mangrove trees, and it was absolutely teeming with life.
Just crawling with bugs.
Crickets chirping, beetles crawling, fuzzy moths resting, spiders spinning webs, even tiny tree crabs scurrying along the branches. It was an entirely untouched, massive food source, an aerial buffet hanging right over their heads, totally out of reach of any other fish.
They realize, hey, nobody else down here is eating those bugs. If I can just find a way to reach up there and grab them. And boom, over millions of years of evolution, trial and error, the built-in water gun is born. They turn the sky into their hunting ground. And by doing this, by shooting bugs out of the trees, the archerfish actually performs a massive vital service for the whole swamp ecosystem, right? They act like ecological bridges.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it. In the study of ecology, we spend a lot of time tracking the flow of energy. We look at how calories move from one living thing to another. Normally, the energy in the terrestrial world, the land and the trees, stays up there. Birds eat bugs, snakes eat birds.
And the aquatic stuff stays aquatic.
Right. And the energy in the aquatic world stays below the water. Big fish eat little fish. But by actively knocking those insects out of the high branches, the archerfish forces a transfer of energy from the land directly down into the water.
They're literally pulling calories out of the sky and feeding the swamp. Because if the archerfish wasn't there doing the shooting, all those calories from the juicy caterpillars and the fat spiders might never ever reach the aquatic food web. The archerfish is the bridge that connects the sky to the sea.
They are a keystone of energy transfer. But as fascinating as their adult lives are, we have to talk about how they start out. We've talked so much about these master snipers shooting bugs. What about the babies? How do you grow up to be an archerfish? Do the parents build a nest? Not even close. The beginning of an archerfish's life is a massive numbers game. It starts with an event called broadcast spawning. When the rainy season begins and the conditions are just right, huge groups of adult archerfish leave the tangled roots and swim out to slightly deeper, clearer waters.
Okay, so they head out to sea a little bit.
Just a little. At the exact right moment, a single female can release up to 150,000 floating eggs at once into the water column.
150,000. That is a staggering number of babies. Do the parents stick around to guard the eggs or teach them how to shoot when they hatch?
They provide absolutely zero parental care. They release the massive cloud of eggs into the current, turn around, and swim right back to the safety of the mangroves. Their job is done.
Wow, good luck out there, kids.
Pretty much. The eggs are left completely to the mercy of the ocean. However, they hatch incredibly quickly, usually in just 12 to 24 hours.
Wow, so they go from egg to tiny swimming larvae in less than a day, and then they just drift with the tides back into the protective, tangled roots of the swamp to hide. So they are totally on their own from day one. Since they are barely the size of the grain of rice, they're obviously too tiny to shoot a cricket out of a tree. So what do they eat to survive?
In those critical early weeks, before their mouths are big enough and strong enough to learn to shoot, the tiny babies survive by hunting microscopic prey. They eat zooplankton tiny floating animals in the water column, but as they get just a little bit bigger, maybe an inch long, they actually start practicing with their water jets.
Do they shoot at tiny gnats?
No, they don't shoot at the sky yet. They use them underwater.
Underwater water guns? Wait, how does it even work? You can't shoot an uber blob of water through water.
Right. The physics of the uber blob only work in the air, but they use a different technique called benthic shooting. When these young fish are foraging down near the bottom in the shallow, muddy parts of the estuary, they angle their mouths downward toward the floor. Then they fire rapid, sharp pulses of water directly into the mud and sand.
Oh, I get it. It acts just like a high-pressure hose or a leaf blower.
Exactly. They use the pulse of water to blow away the top layer of silt and sand. This action uncovers hidden, burrowing worms, tiny shrimp, and microscopic crabs that thought they were safe hiding in the mud. The young fish even adjust the length and force of the pulse based on what they are looking at.
So they customize the blast.
Yeah. If it's fine, soft mud, they use a light pulse.
Hmm?
If it's heavy, coarse sand, they use a stronger blast.
They use the water jet as a shovel, a high-powered water shovel, to dig up their dinner. These fish are just endlessly resourceful. They have a tool for every situation. And it turns out that we humans have actually been paying close attention to this incredible resourcefulness for a very, very long time. Thousands of years, in fact.
Yes, while scientists in modern labs are studying their math and physics today, human cultures have recognized and respected the unique abilities of the archerfish for millennia.
If you travel to northern Australia, the archerfish holds a deeply respected place in Aboriginal Dreamtime stories. For tens of thousands of years, First Nations peoples have lived alongside these fish in the wetlands and estuaries, watching them hunt.
It's a deep historical connection.
It is. There is ancient, beautiful rock art painted on cave walls in this stunning traditional X-ray style. This style of art shows both the outside shape of the fish and the inside bones and organs at the same time. These ancient paintings celebrate the archerfish for its extreme cleverness, its patience, and its intelligence. It is a fish that commands respect from whoever shares its environment.
And that deep respect for the fish's mechanics continues today, just in a different form. We are currently living in an incredibly exciting era of engineering known as biomimicry.
Biomimicry, let's explain that for our listeners. Bio means life, and mimicry means to copy. So biomimicry is when human engineers and inventors look at nature's homework, see how an animal solves a problem, and say, hey, that is a brilliant idea. Let's copy it to build better machines for ourselves.
That is the perfect definition. Nature has had millions of years of research, development, and evolution to solve incredibly complex physical problems. We are just starting to catch up. Engineers are actively studying the archerfish right now to solve modern industrial technological challenges.
Like what?
For example, think about large-scale industrial manufacturing. Keeping delicate, massive factory machinery clean often requires blasting it with water, which uses massive amounts of water and energy, and can sometimes damage the machines if the pressure is wrong.
Enter the brilliant minds at the Fraunhofer Institute and their invention, the bionic jet.
Yes. The engineers at Fraunhofer studied the exact fluid dynamics of the archerfish's mouth. They mapped how the fish changes the shape of its nozzle to create kinematic gathering and that heavy, high-impact uber blob of water.
Because a normal hose is just boring and inefficient.
Right. They realized that a traditional factory hose just sprays a steady stream. So they built specialized spray nozzles for factory cleaning hoses that perfectly mimic the fish's mouth.
So the hose pulsates the water in the exact same sequence as the fish. The backwater catches up to the front water, creating a massive impact. And the result of copying a fish. These bio-inspired hoses can clean heavy machinery with incredible targeted force while using 80% less water and 80% less energy than a normal hose.
It's a massive leap in efficiency.
A tiny fish in a swamp is literally teaching us how to conserve water and energy in our massive factories.
That is so cool.
The applications go well beyond just cleaning, too. Roboticists and mechanical engineers at places like MIT are fascinated by how the archerfish moves. They are building soft, robotic submarines modeled entirely after the archerfish's body shape and propulsion system.
Robofish.
Essentially, yes. By copying how the fish silently swims, hovers without making ripples, and senses its environment, they are creating highly advanced, autonomous underwater drones.
And what do they use those drones for? Do they shoot bugs too?
Huh? No, they don't shoot bugs. Because the robots move exactly like a real fish, they can silently navigate complex, tangled environments like coral reefs or underwater caves to study marine life. Traditional submarine drones have loud propellers that scare all the fish away. But the archerfish robot can swim right up to a school of fish without disturbing them, allowing scientists to gather natural data. From Aboriginal rock art in Australia to MIT robotics labs, this little fish has truly made its mark on the world. But as with all the amazing creatures we talk about, we have to talk about the serious side of this story. The archerfish is tough, it is brilliant, it is adaptable, but it is facing a massive, looming challenge right now.
Yes. It is a sobering reality. While the archerfish itself is an incredibly resilient species, its survival depends entirely, 100%, on the health of its home, and the mangrove forests of the world are in severe danger.
We talked about this extensively in our mangrove story, but it absolutely bears repeating here. These vital coastal forests are being destroyed and chopped down all over the globe at a terrifying pace.
They are being aggressively cleared for coastal urban development, for building hotels and expanding cities. They're being drained for agriculture. But the biggest threat by far is commercial shrimp farming.
Shrimp farms.
Yeah. Massive swaths of ancient mangrove forests are bulldozed to create shallow, temporary ponds to raise shrimp. When those trees disappear, the entire fragile ecosystem collapses.
Right. Think about the chain reaction. If you cut down the trees, the rich canopy of leaves vanishes. If the leaves are gone, the insects vanish. If the insects vanish, the archerfish loses its only major food source. And without the tangled root systems in the water, the baby fish have nowhere to hide from larger predators.
If the mangroves go, the archerfish loses its home, its nursery for its babies, and its grocery store all at the exact same time. It has nowhere left to go. And protecting the mangroves isn't just about saving this one amazing sharpshooting fish. It is quite literally about saving ourselves.
Absolutely. Those thick, tangled mangrove roots are the frontline defenders of our human coastlines. When a massive storm surge or a hurricane rolls in from the ocean, those roots act like a giant sponge. They absorb the crushing energy of the waves, drastically reducing the impact and protecting human coastal cities from devastating flooding. If we take away the roots, the water crashes right into our homes.
Furthermore, they are massive, crucial carbon sinks. Mangrove forests pull huge amounts of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere far more efficiently than most terrestrial forests and lock it away deep in the thick, oxygen-poor mud of the swamp for centuries. They're one of our absolute best natural defenses against the accelerating impacts of climate change.
It is the ultimate web of life. When we fight to protect the archerfish's hunting ground, we are simultaneously protecting our own homes from storms and protecting our planet's future climate. It is all beautifully, intricately connected.
It is the finest example of systems thinking we have in nature. Every single piece relies on every other piece.
Okay, let's take a deep breath and recap the incredible journey we've been on today. We met a silverfish that has a built-in blowpipe hidden in the roof of its mouth.
A true marvel of anatomy.
We learned how it literally bends the physics of water to create a high-impact hammerjet, and how it instantly calculates the tricky refraction of light to hit targets completely outside of its own world. We discovered a supercomputer brain that performs high-speed calculus in 40 milliseconds.
Faster than a blink.
Right. A fish that learns by watching its friends, that can recognize specific human faces out of a crowd, and that even understands the deep value of sharing food with its neighbors. And on top of all that, it is a vital energy bridge that pulls life from the sky and helps keep the magic of the mangrove forests alive.
It is a profound, awe-inspiring example of evolutionary adaptation and the sheer ingenuity of the natural world. I want to offer a sincere, heartfelt thank you to you, our listeners. Thank you for bringing your curiosity, your endless imagination, and your love for the ocean to today's story. It is your passion for understanding these creatures that will help protect these vital ecosystems for the future.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. But before we let you go, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder as you go about your day. The archerfish completely refused to be limited by the watery world it was born into. When the underwater world was too murky and too difficult, it didn't give up. It looked up.
It found a whole new world.
It found a way to reach right through the surface and touch the sky using nothing but physics, math, and a little bit of water. So the next time you look around your own local parks, your neighborhood streams, or even your own backyards, ask yourself, what other seemingly ordinary creatures right in your own neighborhood might be secretly using advanced physics or math in brilliant ways we haven't even discovered yet?
Nature is always solving incredibly complex problems right in front of us every single day. We just have to know how to look closely enough to see the magic.
Keep your eyes on the surface, your mind wide open, and never stop exploring the magic in our oceans. Let's make some waves out there.
See you next time on Saltwater Stories.